First up, as the nation moves one way with a long overdue reckoning on dangerous and often deadly racial divides in the country, the president decided to swim against the tide at the post-Juneteenth Tulsa rally.
The unhinged left-wing mob is trying to vandalize our history, desecrate our monuments, our beautiful monuments. So if you want to save your heritage, you want to save that beautiful heritage of ours. We have a great heritage. We're a great country. You are so lucky I'm president. That's all I can tell you.
President also once again referring to protesters as thugs and warned his crowd of insane hypotheticals like this one.
It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and a very tough, I've used the word on occasion, hombre. A very tough hombre is breaking into the window of a young woman whose husband is away as a traveling salesman or whatever he may do. And you call 911, and they say, I'm sorry, this number is no longer working. By the way, you have many cases like that, many, whether it's a young woman, an old woman, a young man, or an old man, and you're sleeping.
What? An hombre, huh? And then there were his musings on the coronavirus, which the president called by a few different names.
The Chinese virus, Kung Flu.
Yet another racist dog whistle. And as for the threat of the virus itself, well, here's what the president told his shoulder-to-shoulder, largely maskless crowd.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
The White House says he was joking, but just before 1 a.m. today, the president tweeted, our coronavirus testing is so much greater and so much more advanced that it makes it look like we have more cases, especially proportionally, than other countries. My message on that is very clear. Indeed, it is, which is why you get people like this guy at his rallies.
We had a friend who died from COVID, and his son was on a ventilator. He almost died, so we know it's real. But then at the same time, you don't know what's the facts.
Unbelievable. Here are the facts. The U.S. officially hit 120,000 deaths from coronavirus today. And while the country has a little over 4% of the world's population, it also has around 25% of all cases of the virus, as well as more than 25% of all deaths. Overall, coronavirus is spreading faster than ever, according to the WHO, and nearly half of all U.S. states are seeing increasing rates. Many of those cases are 20 to 40-year-olds, largely people who have not been taking social distancing seriously, which is kind of good news because younger people are less likely to die. But as Dr. Anthony Fauci told Axios today, quote, the death rate always lags several weeks behind the infection rate. Younger people get infected first, then they come home, and then they infect the older people. The older people get the complications, and then they go to the hospitals. That's Trump's own coronavirus task force doctor speaking. Here in Massachusetts, part 2 of phase 2 of reopening is now underway, and offices can now expand up to 50% capacity. Nail salons, massage, tattoo, and piercing places can open again, among others, and you can now eat inside at restaurants. Of course, there are all new restrictions for these things, but is the country about to go up in COVID-19 flames? I'm joined by Sandro Galea. He's the Dean of BU's School of Public Health and the co-author of Pained, Uncomfortable Conversations About the Public's Health. Doctor, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Jim, for having me.
So the president says the coronavirus is fading away. But as I said to you, roughly half the states see their rates increasing. A number of them see the rate increasing dramatically. What is the state of affairs? Should we be worried?
Yes, I think we should be worried. I think we should continue being worried. I'm not sure that our worry really has changed much over the past several months. We are in Massachusetts where the epidemic curve is at sort of on the other side of the epidemic curve. Now it could come back, but there's no indication of that in Massachusetts. But over the country, we are having more cases, and there are several states that are behind where we are at the Commonwealth. They are beginning their epidemic curve. So collectively, we as a country continue to be in the middle of this pandemic. I think Dr. Fauci's comment is entirely right that you said. I mean, we are seeing different people being infected, and that's sort of good news, as you said. But at the same time, the people who are at risk remain the people at risk. So should we be worried? Yes. Do we now know much more than we did 4 or 5 months ago? Absolutely.
So the president, as you know, is suggesting the reason the numbers are going up is because we're doing, according to him, so many tests, 25 million. Is he right on that?
Well, the president is not incorrect that if we did not test, we wouldn't know who had the disease. But that's obviously simply a wrong way of thinking about it. Not knowing who has cases means that we cannot isolate those cases. We cannot isolate their contacts. We cannot mitigate those cases from becoming clusters, which then become other outbreaks. So we should be testing. We should be testing more, and we should be doing that so that we can know who has the disease so that they don't spread it to others and we do not worsen the epidemic.
When you hear him say things like he said in Tulsa, that he told his people to slow down, what's your reaction to that, Doctor?
Well, it's a little bit of being a bit like an ostrich, burying your head in the sand, isn't it? It's saying, well, if we don't test, we don't know how many cases we have, which is at face value correct. But of course, if we do not test, people are going to be passing it on to other people, passing it on to older people. We're going to have more cases, we're going to have more epidemic, and we're going to have more deaths.
You know, virtually every public health person with whom I've spoken on television and radio, I've asked about the Dr. Birxes, the Dr. Redfields, and of course, the most celebrated, the group, Dr. Fauci. Without exception, when I've said, why don't they just leave and make public statements no longer under the umbrella of the president, who is deceiving the American people and I think endangering their health at every turn. Every one of those public health experts say it's very important to have them inside. Have we not reached the point of no return where essentially the president has given up on this issue, and it would be far better if Birx and Fauci and Redfield were free to tell us the truth about what's really going on rather than providing cover for the president?
I don't know. It's very hard to know what's going on inside. And insofar as we have people like Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx inside helping at least nudge federal policy, I suspect that they actually are doing a lot more good being on the inside than having no one who understands the pandemic on the inside. So it's very hard to say from the outside. But my sense is that Drs. Fauci, Redfield, Birx, the people you mentioned, have been trying to exert pressure from the inside. And to be frank, I think we need that.
But it seems to me that one of the reasons why people are not taking precautions seriously, and one of the reasons that these irresponsible governors, like places like Arizona, where the president is going on Tuesday, and while in the city in which he's going, face masks must be worn, I believe they are not required in the hall in which he will be speaking, is because they hide behind the president's completely flawed, deceptive rhetoric. So what good could they be doing inside that people like you are not aware of?
Well, I think, and I hope, that the majority of Americans actually know who is speaking from a place of expertise and who knows what they're talking about. So, yes, I mean, you showed an example of the gentleman who was clearly listening to the president. I think there are more Americans who are not listening to the president on the facts, and they're listening to people who actually know what they're talking about. So with that being the case, I think having Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, having the national platform is important for all of us.
Well, except they don't have much of a platform these days. But let's move on if we can. Can we come back to Massachusetts? For the most part, Governor Baker, is receiving very high grades. Today, some people with whom you work from time to time gave him very low grades on the reopening, suggesting that they're treating people of color very poorly, low-wage workers very poorly. How are we doing in Massachusetts? How is Governor Baker doing here?
I don't envy Governor Baker his job. I don't envy any governor their job. I think there are multiple competing priorities. I have been very vocal and arguing, and we've discussed this on your show, Jim, about the need to make sure that we lead with equity, that we lead with paying attention to people who are low income, people of color, because they are the people who are bearing most of the brunt of this epidemic. I still think that's the case. I think in general, the Commonwealth has made many steps positively in that direction. I think there are also many forces of inertia that keep us from doing as well as we can on those dimensions.
Can we go back to the beginning? You seem to be pretty measured in response to the fact that roughly half of the states see increasing rates. I, who don't have your skills, are much more worried than you are. One of the places where it's exploding, the next epicenter, is Florida, where the president intends to have a nominating convention at the end of August. Another place where it's exploding is Arizona, where he is going on Tuesday. Talk me off the ledge. Explain, get me to the place where you appear to be, that it's an issue of concern, but not one of alarm, if that's a fair description of your position.
It's fair. I mean, I think I'm measured by avocation. But when you look at the Florida number now, you look at what's happening in Florida, there's no question the cases are increasing, that we are essentially seeing the beginning of a classic epidemic curve that we saw in Massachusetts. However, the deaths have been going down consistently for the past several weeks. Now, it is possible that in a week or two, we're going to see deaths also go up. But we don't know that. Now, why are the deaths not going up? When we were dealing with the beginning of the pandemic in the Commonwealth, cases were going up and deaths were going up. Now, in Florida, they're not. Now, why is that? That's because you have younger people who are getting the disease, because as we're opening up, we have more people who are contracting cases. Now, that's okay, because we know that younger people have fewer cases. The question is, are they then giving it to older people and those who are more at risk? And we don't know that. So is it cause for panic? I don't know that it's cause for panic. I think it's cause for extreme caution. I think it's cause to make sure that anybody who is not social distancing recognizes that they may be getting COVID, and if they are getting COVID, they are putting those who are at higher risk at risk if they're in contact with them. So it really depends on what happens in the next couple of weeks. Do I think Florida is going to go through an epidemic curve like within the Commonwealth? Absolutely. We're going to see more and more cases for the next month, and eventually you'll see that cresting and you'll go down on the other side. If Florida can maintain measures to protect those who are at higher risk, they will not then see an increase in deaths, which means that they will achieve more cases without some of the most adverse consequences. So I suppose I'm trying to be hopeful, Jim, but it's not hope, that it's not foolish hope. It's hope that simply says one could imagine opening, one could do opening, one could, as we're doing in Massachusetts, but in a way that contains risk.
I hope Governor DeSantis is listening. Doctor, thank you so much for your time as always. I appreciate it.
Thank you as always, Jim.